Hi, I'm Chris McBrien, a Gen Xer, and the pop culture from my generation is awesome.
And I'm Yancy Eaton, a millennial, and the pop culture from my generation is dope.
Episode 51, our favorite cartoons. Hey, Chris McBrien here, along with Yancy Eaton. As always, you can always reach us on Twitter at Yancy Eaton or at CMcBrien. McBrien is IEN, or head over to the website popgoesyourworld.com. All of our contact information is there. Reach out to us. We'd be glad to hear from you. Before we get started this week, Yancy, I just have to say, piggybacking on last show, it's just something that you mentioned, and I've got some, from feedback on this, and I thought about it at the time too, but dude, you're 6'2", 220?
I don't think I said I was 6'2". If I did, I was accidentally lying. But yes, I am 6'1", and I'm actually a little heavier than 220 right now, much to my wife's chagrin. Yeah, I'm about 225.
So you're 6'1", 225. I just think it's amazing because the thing is, again, we always talk about peeling back the curtain, about the way that we do things around here. You and I have
how
never.
The sausage is made.
Yeah, exactly how we do things around here. You and I have never actually physically met. We've never been in the exact same space and shook each other's hands and looked in each other's eyes. We've never actually met.
Correct. Not as of yet, and not for lack of trying.
And we certainly will. Happen. Yeah, it will. As I mentioned before, you're invited, to come up to Canada sometime for a vacation. I'll try and make my way down there to Florida at some point for sure. Canadians, we go down to Florida all the time, right? It's all good. But the thing is, I've just got to say, so not knowing you, physically, you know what I mean? Where I've actually met you, just seeing your picture and stuff like that and hearing your voice and stuff like that. I seriously was floored when you said that you're 6'1", 220 because, no offense, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but dude, you look like you're
babyface.
You look like you're 12. You look like you're 12. I just can't believe that you're 6'1", 225. That's amazing. And I was getting feedback from people, emails and some tweets that were kind of the same thing. So I just thought I'd just pass that along to you. I cannot believe that you're that big.
Yep, I'm big, and my whole family, my brother, my dad as well. We're all the exact same height, but we don't look as heavy as we are. If I say I'm 225, I think people's minds kind of go they fill out a body shape, and I don't know why we're talking about this so much, but I don't look like I weigh 225 pounds, but I assure you, every single bit of it is there. It's just I don't know. It's one of those things. I get that a lot. I tell people that I have, the face of a 14-year-old, and I get carded everywhere. Yeah. But I also am losing my hair, so I have the hairline of a 40-year-old man. So it's just I've got a lot going for me, is what I'm saying. It's just it's a really, really exceptional look. So
I guess it's awesome, dude. Yep. Anyway, so you're ready to get started and get into our topic this week. We mentioned last week we were going to do Interstellar, the movie review. We're going to come back next week and do that. Okay, so this week we're going to take a little sidetrack. We decided one thing that we obviously love is cartoons, and we have a big, sort of varied background on that. You and I are completely different on the cartoons we like, so we thought it'd be fun if we looked at some of our favorite cartoons. So you want to get started?
I am more than ready to get started.
Let's go.
I didn't see it back in 1984, obviously, because I wasn't born.
There was basically one way for young teenage boys to see boobs.
Oh my.
Chris, this is a hard endorse.
Millennials can see boobs whenever they want.
My least favorite movie that you have recommended for me to watch.
The Love Boat.
A movie that did not age particularly well.
Back in the 70s and 80s, Yancy.
Frontal nudity.
There was not the same level of grooming and hygiene that exists now.
Or topless women.
Oh, yeah, that's my uncle up there.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you. I think maybe I should try and watch a millennial show. Okay, Yancy, I'm going to let you kick us off. Let's do a top 5 this week. We're going to mention our favorite cartoons. I think they're going to be wildly different. The one thing I will say is, of my 5, 2 of them you've heard of for sure. One of them I might even say might even be on your list. But I can guarantee, I will lay money down, okay, that this 6'1", 225 guy on the other side of the microphone has never heard of 3 of these shows. I can guarantee you've never heard of 3 of them. But anyway, so you want to start us off. What's your number 5 cartoon of all time? I'm dying to know what these are from a millennial point of view.
Okay, so number 5 for me is the comedy, or the Adult Swim comedy that is called Rick and Morty. I don't know if you've seen it, Chris.
I don't know it. I don't even know what it is.
Rick and Morty, Chris, I was late to the game. I only just recently started watching it, but I can see this becoming one of my favorite shows, if not my most favorite show of all time. And I don't use hyperbole when I'm saying that. It is an animated cartoon that profiles the life of the universe's most brilliant scientist. His name is Rick Sanchez, and he does all kinds of experiments and fools around with time travel and multiverses and all these things, and he has adventures with his grandson Morty. It sounds like a really dorky premise, but it is a cartoon for adults, and it touches on every single real life scenario you can possibly imagine. Really dark stuff like addiction and depression and just nihilism in general. Struggling to find meaning in the universe, and there's so many different like really really interesting storylines to this, and it's one of those things where the main character Rick, like I said, he's this mad scientist and he's trying to find meaning and purpose, and he tries to give off this this facade that he doesn't care about his family or he doesn't care about life, and like I said, nihilistic viewpoint that nothing really has meaning. But it's one of the most clever, like beautifully animated, just really really sharp, witty. I want you to watch it and really pay attention to the dialogue between these two characters, because there are very, very big overarching themes, kind of like with South Park, which is going to get a little bit of love in this segment too. But it's just a really well done animated feature. The last couple of years, it started to blow up. It used to be like a hipster thing, but it's becoming a little bit more mainstream, and people are really starting to jump on board with it. And it's one of those things where I hope this becomes like The Simpsons, because there's some absolute magic in this. And yeah, I'm going to make it my number 5 with a tentative little note that it's going to be moved up eventually, just because there's not that many seasons out yet. But it is a fantastic, fantastic show. So I was a little long on that, but Rick and Morty.
Okay. We're going to have an interesting conversation tonight, because you mentioned one there, South Park, that is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. But the thing is, I'm taking a different approach with this, because I figured you'd come up with some of these other ones, these newer ones, and instead of going toward any cartoons that were sort of adult based, which obviously South Park is, I went the other way. And I always like to go, I like to go back in time. So I went back in time to when I was a kid. And again, as I mentioned on a previous show, back in my day, Yancy, the only time that you could watch cartoons was Saturday morning. That was it.
Yep.
For the most part. Like, if you wanted to watch cartoons, it was Saturday morning from 8 in the morning until about noon. And then the live action shows started, right? So that was the only time I got to watch cartoons. And so I always think, when I think of cartoons, I usually go back to that time. And when I was 7, 8 years old, and I just loved Saturday mornings watching cartoons before I go out and play road hockey, which is like another Canadian thing we'll get into another time. But anyway, when I would watch cartoons, that's when it kind of took me back. So that's where I went. But we'll talk about some of those other shows, obviously, later. I'm sure you're going to get into them. So my number 5 is a show. It was a cartoon called Godzilla, and it's obviously based on Godzilla. It only ran for 2 seasons, 78 and 79, and got canceled. But then they played it a lot afterwards. I used to always watch it. Funny, I just mentioned Saturday mornings, but sometimes on Saturday afternoons, they play some cartoons as well. And this one I used to always watch in the afternoon. And so basically it's this kind of research vessel called the Calico. And there were these scientists on it. And then they would go out and get into all these adventures. And then they would call on Godzilla. But the flip on this, the way they flipped it, was Godzilla was good. Unlike in the movies and stuff where Godzilla was bad, right? Godzilla was good, and he would come and he would help them and stuff, and then he breathed fire, and then lasers would shoot out of his eyes and stuff, and then they had to, so they wouldn't make it too serious. Because I think at the time too, the studio said, hey, if you're going to make a cartoon out about this, if Godzilla's breathing fire, he can't breathe on anybody, like he can't burn any people, and he can't stomp on any people. So basically took away all Godzilla's fun stuff, right? So the show didn't last long. And then they had comic relief in the form of Godzuki, and Godzuki was Godzuki was his nephew. So it was like a little mini Godzilla, and it would try to fly and then trip and roll around on the boat and stuff like that, and bonk its head and stuff. And because I remember there was when you go back to those Godzilla movies of the 50s, I think there was one that I don't know if it was called Son of Godzilla or what it was, and there was Minya or something like that, was this little baby Godzilla, and it would blow smoke rings because it couldn't blow fire, and it was kind of like that, and they did it for comic relief. But I remember as a kid, I really enjoyed it. But like I say, it was more of a lighthearted kind of thing. There was adventures and stuff in it, but it was obviously a lot more lighthearted than the movies. I mean, you think about the original Godzilla movies. I mean, Godzilla was basically a metaphor for the atomic bomb, this big creature destroying Japanese cities with fire. You know what I mean? That's what it was. And, so they kind of made it more lighthearted, but I like Godzilla, so it made my list.
Never seen it, never heard of it. I'm not anti-Godzilla or Godzuka, Chris, but...
Godzuki, yeah.
Godzuki, I'm sorry, Godzuki. Yep. So yeah, you're 1 for 1 with a very obscure, esoteric TV picks.
There's more. Trust me. There's more.
Staying on brand in that regard.
Yeah. So what do you got for number 4? On to you.
All right. So number 4 for me is a classic. I think I've talked about this in a past episode. It's Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes obviously first came out in 1960. Chris, I think you were like maybe 20, 25?
Yeah, when it came out. That's right. No. Sorry. I was No. When I was 20, I was watching Battleship Potemkin. That's right.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so Looney Tunes is just one of those things that's always kind of been there, where I don't think a person can pinpoint exactly when they first started watching it or what their, the first episode they ever saw was. Is I just always remember being at, in the background of my childhood. It was always one, and like you said, Chris, you alluded to the fact that, Saturday morning was for cartoons. Whenever I was a child, like I mentioned, we didn't really have cable, so yeah, that was the time that I would watch cartoons. It's just on basic network television. You have your 4 or 5 channels, and that's what you watched. And I just remember watching Looney Tunes so much, and just every single main character like Bugs Bunny and Daffy and Yosemite Sam and the Wile E. Coyote, all these different characters are so iconic and they're so immediately recognizable by people who are 90 years old or 9 years old or anywhere in between. And I just love that every single episode it kind of looked the same, but they were still doing different stuff and different criteria and scenarios and different interactions between their characters. And it was just always a mainstay in my life. And I think it always will be. It's one of those things too, where when you watch a show like this, that is, quote unquote geared towards kids, and you can sit there as an adult and watch it. And then, the next thing you know, like you've been binging and watching 3 or 4 episodes on like a, Cartoon Network marathon or something. It's just one of those things for me that's always had that appeal. It's one of those, it's like Major League, Chris, we've talked about. If Major League's on TV, you'll just sit there and you'll watch it. Or, some other film like that. Looney Tunes has always held that place in my heart. I'll always go back to it. I don't think it'll ever get old. Even as they've kind of changed it, it'll come off air and then they'll syndicate it and then they'll create new episodes. There's always just been magic attached to it. So Looney Tunes, my number 4. And I hope they go forever. I hope this is like a Sesame Street thing where they just keep pumping out more Looney Tunes episodes.
Well, good for you. I'm glad that you picked Looney Tunes, especially the old ones, because there might be some crossover later in the show. Let's just say that. Okay, number 4 for me, I'm going with another really obscure one. So this is one that ran for like 16 episodes in 1974. And then was...
How many episodes?
16 episodes in 1974 and then got canceled. But the thing was, again, I mentioned, if I take myself back to when I was 7 or 8, in the later 70s, watching Saturday morning cartoons, they always played this one over and over and over. And so I watched them all and I really loved it. It was called Hong Kong Phooey. There are Gen Xers out there who know exactly what I'm talking about here. So what it was this, bear with me. Okay. You gotta hear me out. So there was this, dog, right? And his name was Penry. And he basically worked at the police station as a mild-mannered janitor. Okay. So he was the janitor. But then what would happen is when the things would get out of control for the cops and there'd be like really bad crime going on, he would run over into this like filing cabinet and jump in and then boom. And then he would come out and he would be, he would now be Hong Kong Phooey. So he'd have like a, like he had like this bandana around his eyes and he had like this Kung Fu, I don't know, whatever it's called, like the outfit, with the black belt, and he'd come out, woo, woo, woo. But the thing was, he was like really clumsy and he'd fall down and like always get stuck. And then, I don't know, I just really and the best thing is that it was voiced by Scatman Crothers. And Scatman Crothers, I absolutely love Scatman Crothers. And I don't know if you would know him in any way. You'd know his voice. Actually, you know what, Yancy? You've mentioned before on a previous show, you like that movie The Shining, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in the movie The Shining, remember the guy that takes the axe to the gut?
I do.
Bald guy? That's Scatman Crothers. He's got that really recognizable voice. And anyway, so he did the voice of Hong Kong Phooey. And I like I say, I just loved Hong Kong Phooey. You can find episodes on YouTube because I've made my son watch them, and he absolutely loves them too. So it's not just me. I think it's a kid thing. But Hong Kong Phooey is my number 4. Another esoteric one. Sorry.
2 for 2 of stuff that I've never heard of before.
Loved that show as a kid. Oh, man.
Okay. Number 3 for me, I went back and forth on this. If there were ever a time to have like 20 honorable mentions, I think it'd be for this because I just enjoy the whole cartoon genre in general. Like I don't know why. I've just always liked it. And I remember reading something years and years ago where they were talking about how as big as America is, it is still a relatively new country. And a lot of people don't know, but a lot of original art forms don't actually originate in the United States, at least stuff with staying power. But the 2 most widely known prolific art forms ever created purely in America are cartoons and jazz. And, cartoons are still every bit as big as they were when they were first created. And, they've branched off into being adult genres. There's just a lot that is keeping them going. Whereas, jazz is more of like a niche kind of thing. But so with that weird diatribe that means nothing aside, number 3 for me is going to be South Park. I will say this. I have not watched every single episode of South Park. I'm not the most ardent fan. There's lots of stuff about South Park that I've missed. But I will say this. I love the fact that they are never afraid to take chances, and there's nothing that they won't – I don't want to say make fun of, because I think that kind of downplays the cultural significance of what South Park does. Yes, do they want to be entertaining and make people laugh? Sure. But they also do it in a way where they're kind of like the John Oliver of cartoons, where they're trying to teach people something, or they're trying to show you a different viewpoint on like really sensitive subjects that a lot of people just don't have the courage to do. And it's something I've always appreciated, whether it was, them going after religions like Scientology or Islam or Christianity, obviously, or Mormonism, or going out after just like social issues. And they've never been afraid to tackle anything. Like we've mentioned before, the Terry Schiavo episode where they were talking about the paraplegic, the woman who was paralyzed, whatever, in the episode, that won an Emmy. Like people gravitated towards that. They held on to that because, like I said, it is disguised as like this vulgar, like adult male humor that almost seems like it has zero redeeming qualities, but in actuality it's a really good gauge of kind of like our cultural zeitgeist as a whole. And like I said, I just love that they've always taken chances, and they've always used very, very minimal animation. They've done all the stuff themselves. It's the same people that have been there, since the beginning of time, as far as the writers and the producers and the designers. Everything is the same. And despite that, it's still fresh. I still look forward to watching episodes, and I think it's another show that I just hope stays around forever. And that's South Park, my number 3.
Oh man, I tell you, that is a good one. And the thing is too, I love South Park. If you go back and watch the original episode, the very first episode, Cartman gets an anal probe. It's really what they were trying to do was make a couple of 8-year-olds just talk rude. You know what I mean? And just kind of be as crude and vulgar as possible. And that's all it was. But then it slowly started to morph, and it kind of got there, kind of by the end of season 1. But by even like season 4, it was in full stride. It was total social commentary. And you're right. Nobody else does it better. They are able to do something in about a 30-second span or less that would take some people like, a 30-page, essay to explain and to get it out. They're unbelievably spot on. Like you said, they're bold, they'll go where other people won't go. But the thing that I love about it is they have a formula to it, right? And the formula is always the same. These kids are caught in the middle of a certain situation, whatever the thing is. Yeah, like you said, like whether it's, Terry Schiavo episode or, whatever the episode is, the condom use or things like that. And it's all there. They always look at it from the perspective, the adults get involved, and the adults always have unbelievably extreme takes on things, like an extreme one way and an extreme the other way, and these kids are caught in the middle, and the kids usually kind of ground the whole thing back and then look at it that way, and you realize it doesn't have to be in extremes. There can be a middle ground. And I think that message is more important today in your country than ever before. So I think that South Park is as relevant as it's ever been, and I think they've always had a lot to say. Those guys are really talented. When you think about, like I say, what they did on their first episode compared to where they are now, unbelievable. And if you ever have the chance to see Yancy, I don't know if it's ever come to your neck of the woods, if you've ever been to be able to see if you don't, obviously how talented that Trey Parker and Matt Stone are, but if you ever get a chance to see Book of Mormon, oh my goodness, it is so phenomenal. It was one of the best times I've ever had in a theater. Like, it was just so like in live theater. It was so, those guys are so talented. Their songs, the commentary, the way it's done, unbelievable. That's a good one. I like that one. So good on you. You're number 3. My number 3, I'm going a totally different way. Okay. Let me just set this up a little bit. So as you know, The Simpsons, you mentioned The Simpsons, and I'm sure you will again. The Simpsons obviously started as a little kind of segment on the Tracy Ullman Show. Okay. And then they got spun off and they got their own show. Going way back into like the early 70s, there was a show called Love American Style, and they did like this, it was kind of like a Love Boaty kind of show, and they did a small segment that was animated, and then it got its own show. Now, this show only ran from 72 to 74, but it always played again on Saturday afternoons and stuff like that, and Gen Xers will know this when I say this. It's called Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. And it was like, the thing was, it had to do with like a family, right? And so there was the dad, and then there was the mom, and then they had the 3 kids. And the dad was voiced by Tom Bosley, who then later went on to be in Happy Days and play Mr. Cunningham. But before that, he did this show, and I'm not going to get into it too much. Gen Xers know exactly what I'm talking about. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember that show. I love that show. And it's really kind of hard to explain because it's something you have to watch. But the idea is that, again, there's this family and all the things that go on. And like the theme song kind of says it all. The theme song says it all. If you get a chance, go to YouTube, Yancy, and look up Wait Till Your Father Gets Home intro. And just watch it. And it's just like, I love my mom and dad and my brother too. The groovy way we get along. It's all super 70s, but it's so hard to explain. It sounds crazy, because he's like this conservative dad and they got these kind of like hippie dippy son and stuff. But Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. That's all I'm going to say. It's awesome. That's my number 3.
You know what I think is really interesting, Chris?
Yes.
Just how often you're able to like work in singing. like you've sang in probably 10 different episodes, at least just a little bit. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, so number 3 for me, it's kind of
number 2. You're number 2 now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, number 2. Number 2 for me is going to be Peanuts. And
okay, because it's not a regular series, so
it's
much, right?
not. It's so I'm talking about Peanuts specials, basically.
Right, the special. Oh, they're so good.
Because if you add up like total watches, I mean, I watch Peanuts every single year. Yes. I'll watch the Christmas one. I will watch, You're a Pumpkin. Every single one has always like made its way through like the family.
That's of course my favorite one of all time. You're a Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, it's just
the great.
I mean, who hasn't seen Peanuts, Chris? I don't really know how to like dissect it, but they're so wholesome. Which is, it's kind of a digression from the other shows that I just mentioned.
Yes.
This one is just like, man, Peanuts just makes me feel good. And watching these, especially like with family, it's just beautiful. And I've always been a personal fan. One year, it was like, I think the first or second year that Malik and I bought our home. And I told my mom, I'm like, yeah, we just have so much stuff going on, whatever. We didn't even buy a tree, right? And to my mom, who loves Christmas and worships Christmas more than anything in the entire world, she'll leave her Christmas tree up year round if it were socially acceptable. She loves Christmas. She bought me the little Charlie Brown Christmas tree that lit up and it played the theme song, and it's just so I would have like a little tabletop or Christmas tree. It was like it sounds really dorky me telling this, but it was just one of those things where it's like everybody loves Charlie Brown, and I just feel like it's. Man, I don't know. It's like Rudolph to me. It's like maybe not the best overall as far as like creativity goes, but just such a wholesome like family message, and like it teaches you things. The characters, I mean, they're just as iconic as some of the other shows that we've mentioned. Maybe not your shows because literally nobody's ever heard of them before. But the Peanut specials are just beautiful, and I fought back and forth whether to make this an honorable mention or throw in some of my other shows as honorable mentions, like Bob's Burgers or King of the Hill. But I just had to give it love because, I mean, I watch every single special for every single holiday every single year. And that's just a tradition of mine that, and of my family's too, that I just want to hold on to. I want to give them a little bit of props. It's just, I don't know. It's just amazing. I'm sure you've seen them a million times.
Oh, yeah.
Do your boys like have any sort of connection with the franchise at all? Is it something you do?
Yeah. I mean, they watch them as well, and they love them all. One of my favorite things about the Peanuts movies or the specials that they used to have was I loved it whenever, like, it was always from a kid's point of view. So whenever the adults would talk, like if the teacher would talk, it would always be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. And you couldn't hear their voice because it was like, kids just wouldn't understand, they wouldn't relate to it in any way or something, so it was just, I don't know, I thought that was kind of a neat thing. And I do agree with you, they always had a big heart in it, no matter what, especially with the tree and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty good. No, that's a good one. I like that one. So, okay, so my number 2. Okay, going back again to the 70s Saturday morning cartoons. And this one has been besmirched a little bit because of what has gone on with this comedian's personal life, let's just say. But way back in the day, Bill Cosby used to be, everybody liked Bill Cosby, and he was wholesome, believe it or not, at one point. And he did a show, and it was Fat Albert, and Fat Albert, man, I'm telling you, in its heyday, I loved it. So I don't know if you've ever had a chance to watch. I'm not talking about that crappy movie with like whatever that guy from Saturday Night Live, not that stupid thing, but like the the actual animated show from the 70s. So it's this gang, the Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, and they grow up in the ghetto, and they have no money, and so they just hang around the junkyard, and then they build like instruments out of stuff, and then they play, and the characters in it are so good. Bill Cosby did a lot of the voices, not all of them. He did some of the voices. He did like Fat Albert and stuff. And then one of my favorites too was Mushmouth, was one of the guys, and he just, I don't know, he just talked weird. So he'd be like, haba hooba hooba waba heba haba hooba waba. And like, okay, no one understood what Mushmouth ever said. It's like, okay. And, I don't know. So it was really, really good. But again, at the end, it was all these like things that happened. It was a lot of social commentary in there about what it was like to grow up in the ghetto, back in the 60s and 70s. And it was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I say, since then it's been kind of besmirched, because of Cosby, obviously, and what's gone on with his, his personal life. But I still can't let it, affect the memories that I have of that show from when I was a kid. So it's right up there, man. I love Fat Albert.
I have seen a few episodes, just like they were put on like when I was in school or something. Like if we had a substitute teacher, that was in like the rotation of like family approved movies that a substitute teacher would play for us. So I've seen a few. I couldn't name any of the characters or anything like that. But
what did you think? Like, what was your takeaway? I mean, you can't really remember a lot about it, but did you have like any takeaways that you thought, oh, that was dumb, or that was good, or like that was,
I think a lot of the accents were like really like kind of overplayed a little bit. I think they were almost like caricatures of, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have any particular like strong take on it, but I mean, I don't hate it. Maybe it's something I should go back to. I don't know if it's available in any like streaming services or anything like that, but
I think there's some on YouTube. I've had my son watch a couple on YouTube, and he enjoyed them too. So.
Okay, fair enough. At least I've heard of one, Chris, so we're actually getting some.
All right, it's all good. Okay, I figured the first three, like I said, there's no way you've ever heard of them. But Fat Albert for sure. Okay, so what's your number one?
So my number one is going to be The Simpsons. For most of my childhood, this was my favorite TV show, and it was appointment viewing. And you alluded to earlier in the show when we talked about it with like Saturday morning cartoons. It was always like the Fox lineup for like Sunday night, where you would have like multiple animated shows and stuff after like football games. The last football game would play, and then you could watch The Simpsons and King of the Hill or Family Guy, all those shows. That was like another tradition, just like watching Cops was on Saturday night, right? So The Simpsons have been around forever. Obviously, everybody knows this. I don't have to like explain what The Simpsons are, but there's just so many amazing moments in it, and the fact that like it's just centered around a family, and depending on the seasons, they've done a lot of stuff on just Bart or just Homer. They've done them on Marge and Maggie. I mean, all of the Treehouse of Horror, every single Halloween special is just incredible. All these characters, they've managed to develop them to where if you watch all of them over the course of years and years and years, however many hundreds of episodes, like you actually get a really good sense of who each of these individual, even like one-off characters or characters that you rarely see or are rarely featured on, they do so many different things to build details and kind of build this world around Springfield that, man, it's just such an incredible show, such a dearth of. When I say dearth, does that mean that there's a lack or that there's a lot of? I feel like I'm getting that word wrong. But there's a lot of content. There's a lot of like really, really interesting issues that they talk about. Talk about guests, how many people they've had on the show. I mean, it's basically been everybody from presidents and actresses to like Stephen Hawking made an appearance on the show. And, they've had crossover episodes where different animated shows would come into it. The writing in itself, I don't think it's been as sharp the last couple of years, just because Matt Groening has wanted to be kind of out of it, I think, for a long time. And at this point, some of the episodes are kind of throwaways, to be honest with you. It's kind of lost its spot as far as appointment viewing for me. Like if I miss a Simpsons episode, I'm kind of okay with it now, which kind of breaks my heart saying it out loud, but to admit that, I guess it does kind of hurt. But the show is always there, and it's just I don't know, man. I love Ned Flanders. I love Homer. I love every single character in this, and the fact that it's all these different characters voiced by like 5 different people. Like Hank Azaria plays how many different parts in this in the entire series. It's just a magical show, and I don't know, Chris, if you had to take a guess, like, do you think it's going to be around in 5 years? Will they still be creating new episodes, or will it eventually come to an end? Like,
I don't know. Well, I wouldn't root against it, I guess, at this point, mainly because it's lasted so long. And it's one of those things that, when it was in its heyday, and I remember like watching it like in the early 90s and just in the mid 90s and going, man, this show's great. Like, I mean, it's great, but I mean, it can't last forever. Like, how long can they keep doing these for? And they just keep churning them out, so, I mean, I wouldn't wouldn't root against it at this point. It's been around forever. And the thing was, it's gone through different incarnations, as you mentioned. Like I remember some of the early ones. Like, so I always think back to some of the early stuff. Like Conan O'Brien wrote one that was the monorail. And that one always just stands out to me as one of the great episodes, you know. So that one was good. And then, you know, when some of the creative people kind of changed in and out, I remember when they brought in Ian Maxtone Graham, and I was a big fan of Ian Maxtone Graham when he was with National Lampoon. When I was in university, I loved National Lampoon. It was more of a 70s holdover, but I was a big fan. And he was the editor there, actually, and I used to read it a lot. And then when they brought him on board, I thought, oh man, this might get a little bit too edgy. It might just go a little too far. But the one thing that Simpsons has never lost is its heart. It actually has a big heart, that show. And at the end, and I'm always taken back to the episode when he wants to quit his job and follow up his dream of being a pin monkey. And he wants to work at the bowling alley and put the pins up, and that's what he wants to do. And so he quits his job, and then he realizes that Marge is pregnant, and he's got to go back and crawl back and beg for his job back. And he's got all the pictures on the wall, and they come, and I think Mr. Burns puts up a thing and says, "Don't forget, you will be here forever." And he takes all the pictures of Maggie and puts them up and covers up all the letters so that it says, "Do it for her." And wow, he's a big heart. I like that show a lot. That's a good one, man. That's a good one. Okay, so my number one is actually, we're having some crossover here. You mentioned it earlier, and that's Looney Tunes. That has been a constant throughout my life. There's probably been about, maybe 3 constants in my life. And by that, I mean things that I loved as a kid and I still love as an adult. And I think it's Bugs Bunny, probably ice cream sandwiches, and fish sticks. These are 3 things that I don't know, totally random things. Those are 3 things that I've loved when I was a kid and I still love as an adult. Go figure. But Looney Tunes, like Bugs Bunny, man, oh man, it started way back in the 30s, right? But it was really in its heyday in the 50s. And some of those episodes, like, what other cartoon show can you watch as a kid and be mesmerized? Do you remember the Barber of Seville episode where Bugs is like massaging Elmer Fudd's head, and it's all done to opera music, and he's in the, like, what?
Yes, what? And his like skin is like super loose.
Yeah,
and, like,
it's very elastic, but it's all done to like opera music, and he throws him into the cake that says Marriage of Figaro and stuff. Like that's hard to believe that a kid would be, you know, entertained by that, you know, or like sit through that. But I was mesmerized by it, and a lot of the other characters. The thing is, though, I remember in the 70s they started coming out with some new ones, and they introduced some new characters like Speedy Gonzales and stuff like that, and they weren't as good. They just weren't as good. It was the older ones and you could watch them over and over and over again. And, you know, and we did as kids. The Looney Tunes is my number one. Right up there, like I say, as one of the things in my life that I loved as a kid, still love as an adult. So it definitely makes my number one. So that's my list. So
very nice.
A little bit of crossover. So you heard of 2 of mine, 3 of them that you never ever knew what the hell they were, or what was the deal. But anyway, I thought now we would maybe play a little game of
Fun with Yancy.
Okay, so I'm going to do something a little bit different for you this week. One of the shows that I'm surprised that you didn't mention. Actually, there's 2 that I'm a little surprised didn't make your list. Number 1 was Animaniacs. I thought that you would definitely get into that.
That was in my honorable mention.
Yeah, so I thought that would have made the top. But anyway, and the other one to me was Pokemon. Now I know Pokemon is, you like it maybe more as a game, you know, to play, right? As a video game. But I think that you've mentioned before you liked watching the cartoon, right? I mean, you were into it as a kid.
Yeah, my love for the actual game itself was spurred because I was watching the shows.
That's
the
what I
show
thought,
was
yeah.
the magic was.
Yeah,
to be honest
really
with you, like, I had a list of maybe like a working list of like 10 to 15 names, and I feel like I've already talked about Pokemon so much. Like, I don't know if we need to get over this. It's like I keep talking about the Matrix, just like you keep talking about like the fish that saved Pittsburgh or whatever that movie is called. You know what I mean? Like, you and I, we have like our things. Like, we each have like a dozen things that we constantly reference over and over again. And maybe that's a little disingenuous of me to like not mention that just because I felt like Pokemon fatigue. But Pokemon is probably like second or third as far as what I spent the most time on, what I got the most enjoyment out of, like how it linked my brother and I together, like at a time whenever he and I were really close in age and we used to fight all the time. Like, I really should have put Pokemon on the list. If it were a top 6, I probably would have. But you do know me pretty well because Pokemon was honestly a very big part of my life for a long time, as dorky as that sounds.
Well, I know you, and I know how much that you love Pokemon, so I thought that I would do this. I'm going to play a little game with you right now that's called Pokemon or Drug. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a name, and you have to tell me if it's a Pokemon or if it's an actual medical drug. Okay?
Okay.
Are you ready?
If we were talking about just the original Pokemon, I would nail this. But they have since added so many generations of Pokemon, so this game might actually be more interesting than people might imagine. So let's do it.
All right, here we go. So again, remember, you got to just, I'll give you a name. You just say if it's a Pokemon or a drug, okay?
Okay.
Here's the first one. Crestor. Is Crestor a Pokemon or a drug? No Googling.
I think it's a drug.
It is. It's for high cholesterol.
Okay.
Okay. Carnotaur.
Oh my god.
Is Carnotaur a Pokemon or a drug?
It sounds like a Pokemon.
It's not. Sorry. It's a dietary supplement, actually.
Carnotaur?
Carnotaur is a dietary supplement. Okay, here's one. Absol. Is Absol a drug or a Pokemon?
A drug.
No, it's a third generation dark Pokemon. I'm very disappointed. How about Sentret? Sentret. Is Sentret?
That is a Pokemon.
That is a
new.
Pokemon.
Yep, I have caught that Pokemon in real life.
Very, very, very good. Okay, what about Voltaren? Is Voltaren a drug or is it a Pokemon?
Okay, so I know there's a Voltorb. I'm going to say that's a Pokemon. I'm going to say that's the evolved form of Voltorb.
No, it's an analgesic. Sorry. Okay, Groudon. Is Groudon a drug or a Pokemon?
I'll say Pokemon.
Yeah, it is. It's a third generation ground Pokemon.
Okay.
So, Metang. Is Metang a Pokemon or a drug?
Pokemon.
It is. It is a third generation Steel Psychic. Very good. And what about Azurill? Azurill. Is Azurill something you would take as a drug or is Azurill a Pokemon? Azurill.
A drug.
No, it's a third generation normal Pokemon. I really thought you would get that one. And what about Roserem? Roserem. Is Roserem a drug or a Pokemon? It sounds
That's
pretty...
a Pokemon.
No, it's for sleep. I'm sorry. Some of these are really, really tough, as you can.
Chris, I will give you an A+ for creativity. I was not expecting this for trivia tonight.
We never mentioned what we're going to do for each other for trivia, so I thought I'd do something totally different. I just remember that you love Pokemon, so I thought this might be kind of an interesting way to kind of have some fun with you. So,
well done.
Yeah, I'm glad that you liked it. You didn't get very many of them either. That's tough.
Did I get one? Did I get one?
No, I think you got two or three. So it's all good. But I mean, the thing is, like, even if you love Pokemon, it's hard to tell. Is it a drug or Pokemon? It's not that easy, is it? So there you go. So anyway, so hopefully that was a little bit of fun. Listen, so like I mentioned at kind of the top of the show, we had mentioned that we were going to do Interstellar. So we're going to come back next week. We're going to watch Interstellar. You've obviously seen it a zillion times. I got to give you my take on it. Next week we're going to do a movie review of Interstellar. But in the meantime, this was a lot of fun to do. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight, Yancy.
I did. Again, A+ for creativity. Fun show as always. And
it's always a good time.
Let's talk Interstellar next week, assuming that this upcoming hurricane does not wipe me off the face of the earth.
Yes, please. I've been seeing that in the news. Hopefully everything's going to be good and be safe in the meantime. Take care of yourself down there in Florida, and hopefully everything's going to work out okay. All right. Until then, this is Chris McBrien for Yancy Eden saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thank you for listening to the Pop Goes Your World podcast. Continue the conversation on Twitter at @CMcBrien or at Yancy Eaton. Please consider leaving a review for the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.